Print Job Designer. And everybody here with Print Job Designer. What we're looking at right now is a landscape form with portrait mapping done on it. And you can see the form actually ends here at the bottom. And you can see this is my form that I accidentally sent on landscape. So what happens when you send it on landscape? The fields that are mapped below what is the actual page not show there. In addition, I wanted to go over where the settings are in landscape, because there are a couple of things that you really have to do here. So this was truly a landscape form. First, the PCL file will need to be created landscape, and secondly, under the printer settings, this will need to be set landscaped as well. When we do that, it actually rotates the form so that the form displays correctly. What you'll do after you make that change is save the merge and reopen it. And when you reopen it, it will display correctly. And I'll show you what I'm talking about there. So if I go into here and make this portrait again, and see now that the form is displaying correctly, I can go ahead and save the form and reopen it. You see now that it's actually displaying it as in a portrait format, so that you can see the whole thing is there. So save and reopen it when you're doing this, but that has to be set, and it's under settings. It needs to be set either for portrait and landscape. So two things: the PC file needs to be set, as well as it needs to be set within here. And if it's synced correctly, you're going to see things disappear at the bottom of the page, and it's going to look like part of the page is missing. Or if you actually do have a portrait and you have it set for landscape, what you're going to see is form missing on the right side. So you'll see this section below is actually supposed to have data out there as well. If you ever see a page that's trimmed like this, just realize that you've probably got landscape or portrait set wrong. And we're going to look at what happens when you do the dots set wrong. First, I'm going to go ahead and put it back on the right form so that we can all see what it should look like, because we started with it messed up. So we're going to actually choose the correct form for this form. And this is what the form should look like. So this is correct. And what I now is show you what it looks like when you open a PCL that was created at 600 dots per inch. So if they've mistakenly forgotten to do that, what you're going to end up with is one, and I've got one at 600. And you can see this is the upper left corner of the form, and it's almost like the form was put on a photocopier and doubled in size, or put on a magnification of 100%, so it's twice as big as it should be. Boxes are all out of whack, fonts are all out of whack. It actually came out better than a lot of them. A lot of them, it'll be completely distorted, but if things look way too big, then you probably left that size set wrong. So that if you open one and the size is all wrong, then that's a clue there. Next, look at what happens when you create a multi-page PCL file instead of a singular page PCL file. It's trickier because you think something else is wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and open that now. And you can see all my mapping disappeared. And choose other fields, and I drag those fields to the form. Get to the form, the date's going to disappear on them. That's because actually a form feed in the PCL file, so our imager is getting form feed, and the actual data that we're mapping to the form is on the next page, which does show on this page. It's basically got the command to quit. So it doesn't show, but it looks like there's a problem with Print Job Designer in the mapping, and truly the problem is with the PCL file. So if I switch back to the correct PCL file, or the single page PCL file, and do that. And bear with me 1 second, sorry. You can fills the form form in and the form looks okay. So the corrupt PCL file can cause the mapping to disappear. So if the mapping disappear, that could be why. That could very well be why. Including, and I'm going to go ahead just so you can see this as well, and save that correctly so that it won't belong in the system. And look at our example, and our example has an included merge, and the included merge is down here, if everyone can see that. And what I'm going to do is open that bad PCL file. So hit the form button, I'm going to choose, and even though the form is different and a little bit ugly, you'll still get the gist of it. So here's a PCL file, and you can see even my included merge section dropped off the form. Data that you have on the form is going to disappear if you have a multi-page PCL file. And all you have to do is recreate them in singular, or single-page PCL. So it's a really easy thing to fix, but that's what could do it. Now the more complicated part, and what I'm trying to do is cover common issues that people have. First, we're going to look at the criteria, and we're going to talk about the criteria and how the criteria works. And the criteria is applied in a 1, 2, 3 sort of fashion. 1, the job criteria, 2 being merge criteria, and 3 being the printer criteria. Questioning which has the flaw or where the issue you may be having from, you can go into Print Managers. You can actually see whether it's choosing the correct job. You can see if it's choosing the correct merge, and you can see whether it's choosing the correct printer. What we do when you call for help, so that is the sort of steps that we take there. Reeling some hard and fast rules with FormFast. One is the job, and we're going to look at these jobs, and I'm going to just do a little explanation here that our job criteria should be a 1-to-1 ratio. In other words, data sent to FormFast should be targeted to a specific job. You can't have 2 jobs that a single file will meet, or it will randomly pick one or the other. Makes sense to everyone, but I'm doing a monologue. But the gist is that it should be 1-to-1 ratio. So when you hit print in Meditech, McKesson, or whatever HIS system or whatever other system you may have, when it hits the FormFast collector, it needs to be targeted to a single job. And if not, it'll randomly pick one or the other. So if our admissions packet and statement, it would randomly print either the admission packet or the statement, which would be a problem. So it should be 1-to-1. And next we're going to look at merges, and I'm going to open the admission pack, and we're going to just look just a tiny bit at this, just because this is the kind of issues people have. And the second type of criteria, or the second step in the 1, 2, 3 steps, and merge criteria. The criteria is going to decide whether or not to print a single page. And to digress a little bit here to go ahead and explain more, but it would be things like here where I'm looking for Medicare and any of the 3 insurances, or looking for a bunch of different financial classes, or whatever it may be, to decide we need to print that page. So that's step 2 in the process, and that's deciding on which page to print. Step 3 is probably the most complicated but not complicated. It is the most complicated, but it's not complicated at all. Understand it, and understanding it is sometimes an issue. The printer criteria, and criteria is kept within our most aptly named FormFast software, which is the printer chooser. It does exactly what the name implies. It chooses a printer. It's a little bit different than the merge criteria and the job criteria. The job criteria has to be 1-to-1. The criteria decides whether or not to print that page. The way the printer chooser works is it is a sequential thing. So it checks the first one, the second one, the third one, and it works its way down the printer chooser list until it finds one that the data that it received meets. In my example that I've got, I'm showing you a common error that people have, and that is they'll put a printer in here, and you can look at my file output, and we get the criteria on my file output. I've got a completely blank screen. In FormFast, a blank screen means to do this for everyone. Basically done here is made every printer in the list except this very first printer from printing. So if it's sent to this printer, it prints perfectly fine. If it's sent to any printer below file output, it's not going to print. And if we move that down, which would be probably more applicable, we have a bunch of printers above it that work just fine, but none below it that did. So it's critical that you know what's in every one of these as you create them and add them, and that you don't leave a blank one in here, because if you do a blank one in here, everything is going to print on that printer. Probably more than my file output, and that would be that this one particular one, let's say it had no criteria at all on it. Well, everything is going to print its location, which is worse than it not printing at all, because they're going to get bombarded with that particular printer, and nobody's going to get anything on any of these printers below that one. So the chooser works, and once again, it is sequential. It goes down the list starting at the top and works its way down. We'll have a hard time with that is the versus the printer. I'm going to look back at the job criteria one more time. I've got this medical record, and then I've got the consent form that's actually on the back of that form. Both of these merges are set to use the printer chooser. This is to go to a specific printer. Let's say I wanted it to print in the medical records department. I hit here, and I remove the chooser. Set to go to medical records, and I'm going to pretend that's the medical records printer. This will always print on medical records. So to duplicate it, this is what people do mistakenly. They'll duplicate it, and they'll think, okay, now I've got one going to medical records. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this one to use the chooser. Got one set to go to medical records, and back to it. And I've got one set to use the chooser, but in reality, since they're the same merge, make the change, it changes it on both of them. So if I go here, you can see I have the chooser chosen for this one, and when the chooser chosen for it. And if I go back here and say, oh, I didn't want the chooser for this one, I wanted to go to medical records, move it. Oh, I didn't mean to delete it, just clear it. If I remove it, and, oh, now I've got it set. Well, if I go back to this one, I'll set it because it's all the same merge. So the way that you would do this correctly for sheet medical records and face sheet consent would be to do this. I'm going to show you the correct way to do it. What you would do is go into the merge, and I'm face sheet medical records and face sheet consent. So I'm going to go to face sheet medical records and file, merge as, and I'm going to save this merge as medical records to medical records. And then open up the consent, which is the back page, because once again, we can't have a front without a back or a back without a front, and that's another thing that I hadn't hardly touched on, but we'll touch on next. And I'm going to go ahead and open that one. This is the back, sorry. And that one as. And if back into my job, face sheet consent, and if I want one to go directly to the medical records department, now I could click Add, and I choose the face sheet, and I could click it, and I can choose and they're ordered wrong, so I'm going to move that one up, and both of these, and I'm going to move these up to the top. Okay, now I've got a medical record or a face sheet for medical records that I can have print in the medical records department. This one, so I could go into this one and make sure the chooser is not chosen. And to this one and make sure that the chooser is chosen. Got one using the chooser and one going directly to printer. This is true too if you were using multiple printer choosers. Let's say you have a chooser that printed on the nurse's floor and a chooser that printed at the admitting location. You did a single form to print at the nurse's station and in the admitting location. You would have to create two merges for that because the printer is kept with the merge. Now back to front. Another issue you'll see, and typically the job fails at that point. So if you have a front without a back or a back without a front, the job will fail and it will stop printing at that point. You won't get subsequent pages. So that's important to look to, and that would be, you can see my example here, I have a front, and then go to the next merge, I have a back. And we set with the form, and that's only if you're doing duplexing. But if you are doing duplexing in the job, they have to be front and back and have to be put together, if that makes sense. So it has to have a front and a back. It can't have a back without a front or a front without a back. Next, one of the other issues are issues where people go into the file structure and start renaming things. Easy to do because you want to keep things clean. And it is a good thing to do. Just know when you're doing it that you could cause issues. So bear with me 1 second. Let me get to that file location, and we're going to look at what happens when you do that. So I'm going to go into, and I'm going to go into one of these merges, and go into one we just created. This one. Well, let's take the MR out because we won't need MR in there twice. We have a medical record. Why do we need MR? Now, I've renamed that. Let me rename it. It all went fine. But now when I open this job up, it's just perfectly fine because I didn't save the added pages. So, because I didn't save it. So give me just 1 second. Let's take it off this one. So we're going to go to this one, and we're going to remove medical record from it. And we're going to go back into our job here, and we're going to open up the admission packet. And we get the error that I was looking for before. And basically it's saying this merge is not found. So if you get this error, be careful, note what's missing, because you can actually go in and easily fix it. What I can do is, and this merge missing, so that's what it does when a merge is missing. And I'm going to show you the others as well. So I'm going to open that up, and it's going to go ahead and open, even though it doesn't display it. It can't display it because that merge is missing, but I can go into the properties. I can use the missing page and fit it to the correct page. Save it, and now it's all fixed. What you do is go ahead and create duplicates and then move the original rather than what I just did. So in that case, what you would do is open the merge you wanted to rename, save it the new name, it is in the merge. But it's important to remember that PCL files are kept in the merge kept in the job. And any renaming you do of the PCL file is going to affect merges. Any renaming of the merges is going to affect the jobs. The jobs are one of the only things you can rename without repercussions to renaming them. But if you're naming merges and PCLs, you have to be very careful about that. It tells you what's missing as well when you get into it. So if you do that, just pay to its instructions, and it can lead you back to correct and change one just for kids. And then we're going to change it back because it's used in a whole bunch of different ones, and we will to each one. And actually, I will go ahead and show you that because that's the true example. So I'm going to change this FFADM to FFG. It's going to cause us all sorts of problems, which is fine. And now reopen this job. And notice now it's saying the PCL file is missing. It can't merge because the PCL file is missing. So what I do is I know this merge, so I can simply hit the Form button and use the face sheet and save it. And if I reopen that job, it should be okay because now it has the face sheet chosen. But more than one instance of that in this job. So as I go merge plus and go to the consent and go merge plus, up here it's missing again. This one I'll also need to change it. So I'll need to hit the Form button again and read it. So the moral of this would be to only name them if you're really comfortable with FormFast. And that one, and then we'll continue on. So now that one's okay. If I go back to it, you'll see. And just run through this. There's only 15 pages in mine. Some of you may have 35 pages in your admission packet, so it may be more elaborate than what I'm dealing with. But then I can sort of check for errors as well as I'm running through it. So I'll see any errors. It'll list and give me the window there. So everything looked good this time. So I successfully renamed a PCL file. Alias and printer choosers. If you're deleting an alias, that has to be removed from all of the jobs that it's used in. And what I mean by that is all the jobs and all the merges. If we go to printer, you can see now I've got that particular one chosen for this one. Local is one that we use on quite a few. Let's see if I can find one that has local printer chosen. Well, now I do. And go to my user, or I'm sorry, printer is, and try to delete that. It can't be deleted because it's used by a merge. And it's which one. So you could go into that merge and change it, but basically it's trying to keep you from screwing up. So it's sort of a good thing. So that's where it's actually checking the merges to see if the alias is used and not letting you delete it. And exactly the same thing with the printer chooser. If we go to the printer chooser, highlight the chooser and go to delete it, it's going to, well, don't do that because it allowed me to, but it should not have. It'll only let you delete the chooser as well if it's not being used as well. So you're going to get that message that it's being used a lot. Just a couple more minutes, and I wanted to show you one of the really exciting things that we got coming down the pipe, and it's real soon. It's actually really close. And that's Print Manager that runs as a service. And it's, again, I'm giving you a peek at something that is not necessarily something that's available today, but will be available very, very shortly. And for running multiple print managers, this is a wonderful thing. What I want you to do is have multiple print managers running all in one application versus having a separate print manager for each one of them. They can all be stopped and started independently, and they can all be configured independently. So settings can be kept within here as well. And each thing is, once you start them, and we can start a service, these, then they run in the background as a service. So this is the first of the three pieces. We've got the HL7 tracker, the IP data lister, and print manager, but this one we do have and running as a service now. So this will allow you to run multiple print managers as a service and actually control them all within one application instead of having I've got 8 there, having 8 print managers running and having to toggle between them all and start them all back if the server restarted. This will start to run all 8 if I went through each one and started them and set them up. So it was informative, and I'm going to pass it back over to Philip for closing remarks. And if you have questions, please feel free to contact us, and we'll be glad to help.
Perfect. Thank you again for doing this today, Brad.
No problem.
I do have a few questions for you. So the first one was what version of Print Job Designer was used today?
I'm actually using version 5, and you'll notice it's brand new, but it's still similar to the old. But you can see we've actually done one other thing too, which is changed the icons so that every icon doesn't look exactly the same, so that down here we can tell that's Print Job Designer instead of just a FormFast app. Also, you can tell Print Manager versus before they used to all be FF. Sorry,
okay.
Ted.
What happens when the printers are moved, and how are print chooser and alias affected?
Alias would be affected when a printer was moved if the printer name changed or if the printer IP address changed. Could actually change the IP address in the printer itself within Windows, but if it's a print server, the only thing that would change the printer would be changing the name on the print server, and be the only thing that would change, not necessarily the print alias. So on the alias, you could actually change the printer it pointed to and leave that alias name and leave the user still use that same name. You should have to change is the alias.
How many merges can you have?
One customer that has close to 1,000 merges, and so I don't know of the hard fast limit, but it's really, really large.
Okay. And DPI should the form be created at again?
It has to be created at 300. So it's a hard fast rule that when you create the form, when you go to create the form, that this setting be 300. If that's set at 600, it will fail. And it'll actually open it, but it'll be completely distorted. Everything will be double sized.
Okay. And what version is the Print Manager client?
These were all 5.0. The Print Job Designer, it changed very much with 5.0. The addition is the running as a service piece. So this is pretty, there's little tweaks to correct issues, but nothing dramatic changed here as far as Job Designer goes for 5.0. But this particular version I was demoing with is the 5.0.
Okay, and when will the services be available for release?
I don't know. That we could actually put you on that one, and that would be to talk to the and the powers to be to find out when the official release is. I know it's ready for release. I think that all we were waiting on was documentation, and
okay.
I don't know where we stand on the documentation and on the release. The product itself is ready to go. It's just a matter of us having a manual for it.
Someone made a mistake a few weeks ago of deleting a printer chooser.
You have to back up to get it back.
Okay.
If you have a backup, that was your clue that you absolutely positively have to have a backup. And for anybody on the call, if I could do with anything today, the job set folder, it won't have a backup of it. It could be, we've only experienced it once where a customer didn't have any backup whatsoever of their job set folder and lost it. I've only happened once since I've been with FormFast for the past 8 years, but it's prime if we lose the job set folder. So everybody, if you don't back up, you need to have a backup. It should be done routinely, so you need to make sure that your network people are backing it up. The job set folder, if you lose it, it's so I can explain how bad it could be. There, if you've got 1,000 merges, you can imagine what it would take to recreate that if you've got backup. Most of the time, if we don't have a backup, we find out when there is an issue. Printer chooser, and it's full. It's terrible, but it's not as bad as losing the whole thing. So if you don't have a backup, then that's a good point that you need to start having it backed up. But to back it up, so if everybody listening would do that, that would just be wonderful. In this case, if you just want to do this, this is not a good backup, and I'm not suggesting it should be your backup. But if you'll go to your job set, and you could even do this yourself, and that is go to your job set, right-click on your job set, and click Send to Compress Folder. And that, at least it's all on the same hard drive, so if that hard drive disappears, you've lost it. But, I mean, you don't know how many times that would have saved if people had just done that. I can now reopen that, and I can go there, and I can get files out of there. So, for example, your per chooser example you gave me, you could come in and get it if you had done that. And if it was a week old, it would be better than having to start over again.
Okay. If that was done, if it was deleted, should it be recorded as a bug?
I can approach that. We can see if we can get them to trigger it. The problem is there have been times maybe that you do want to be able to delete it, and it's going to give you all these messages. But I can talk to them about whether we can come up with a consensus of whether there should be a message or not, because sometimes the messages can be aggravating too. It's really a bug if you told it to delete it and it did.
Okay. And if a merge you're removing is not in any more jobs.
With the new tool, there's a check jobs. Check it after the fact. In other words, it's not going to tell you which ones it's in. But if you did, in my example, I could, and I'm going to get all sorts of issues because this is just a junk thing that I've got. But you can go through this, and it'll tell you a whole lot about the set. So you rename it and then run this to find if show my desktop.
I don't.
Okay.
Still presenter, so you can pull it back up.
Yeah, I'll redo it. So we've got a function that should find that. It will find it after you deleted it. So after you renamed it. So if you renamed it, you would want to run this and make sure that you didn't miss any instance of it. And on this, you just do the check job button. And you can see my sample here had a few little issues. So check jobs. In the new print manager, if the file fails all of the jobs, it will actually move it to an error folder now, where in the past we just left it in the collector. Now it allows you to have it move it out of the collector for you once it's run through all the jobs and doesn't find a match. Full thing too.
Okay. With your desktop, will the printer chooser save?
Printer is saved under printers folder, and that folder is typically in the merges folder. So I'll try to show you. It's the job sets folder, and I'm going to bear with me while I get there. printers folder, and in that folder would be where the printer chooser would be. That particular one didn't have a printer chooser. I may not now since I deleted mine in that one. Let's see.
Brett.
Okay, back. I got back down.
Okay.
Sorry. So, all right. But in here, let's look at merges and printers. And so that's where the chooser should be. And it'll be an FCP file. FormFast to name all our files with an FC. So there's FCM for merges, or FC alias, FCJ for jobs, FCP for printer chooser.
Question. Where can you reference a source to learn and understand this job designer for the user?
The printer or printer chooser?
Not specified.
Okay, the print job
the whole
designer,
solution.
we have a manual, as well as we have a training manual. So the manual actually tells you everything you could ever want to know about it, and the training manual actually takes you step by step through setting it up and how it works. And both are available for you. So if you want to email FormFast, we'll be glad to get you either of those, either or both.
Perfect. In case if you're looking for, you can send me an email, and I'll go ahead and get that sent out to you. Let's see. So all the time we do have for questions. So right, go over some of the upcoming events that we have. This user group webinar will feature eForms for print and workflow. Now we'll go over the many benefits of using FastFlow with your current Form Designer software, and the link for the registration will be provided on the next page. Our educational webinar series features on important trends, initiatives in healthcare, as well as solutions to any challenges you may be facing at your hospital. Now, the coming webinar titled "Better Processes, Better Outcomes" will feature we'll discuss the need for hospital performance improvement with the importance on increased efficiency and data usage. Now, this webinar is scheduled for Thursday, July 26th at 11 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. The registration link for this webinar will also be provided on the next page. But for the entire educational webinar series, you can visit formfast.com/webinars. And be sure to visit our newly updated webcast section featuring the latest webcasts on healthcare, hospital automation, EMR adoptions, and more. And find these at formfast.com/webcast. And finally, I would like to thank you again for joining us today. Hopefully this information will be useful and also encouragement for you to upgrade to some of the new products that we have available. Now, the link of this webinar will also be sent out to everyone that registered. And if you have any questions or comments or suggestions for upcoming webinars, please contact myself at pblanks@formfast.com. And the application that you saw demonstrated that you'd like more information on, please set up a personal demonstration or meeting for you and your team on the following page. Thank you again for attending, and we'll see you all next month.